Hello and welcome back to the channel, welcome back to another video. This one is captaincy model for game week 23, where we'll have a look at the top 10 players in my captaincy model for game week 23. But first we'll have a look at how the model got on in game week 22. As you can see on screen, 5 blanks, 5 players that returned. It's kind of pretty standard for the model. Sometimes we've had like 6 or 7 return, but 5, as you'd think, is probably the average. The problem this week was that the top 2 did blank. So going from the bottom though, KDB with 12 points. He and City absolutely cooked against Ipswich, to be fair. KDB was unbelievable, just putting it on a plate for Foden. So he came away with 12 points. Odegaard continues to be in this list. However, actually, I don't think he is for game week 23, but he is often in this list and often disappoints. Now, he's in this list because Saka is obviously out, and that means that Odegaard is probably on penalties for Arsenal. But I just wouldn't really want to be trusting Odegaard or Arsenal, to be honest, at the moment. Arsenal are too hit and miss for any captaincy shout, really, I think, unless they're playing against the Southampton or something like that. But Aston Villa definitely wasn't the fixture to go for it. Chris Wood was down in 8. Now, a lot of people would have had him higher. Some people would have actually captained him. And I guess you can say rightly so, given that he got 12 points. I mean, he took the goal really well, don't get me wrong. Took the goal brilliantly. The assist was interesting, if you've seen it. He barely touched the ball. It kind of just flicked off of him. And then I think it was Hudson-Odoi who just did the rest. But an assist is an assist, and it got him the points. So those of you that have got Wood, fair play, well done. 12 points. Nicholas Jackson continues to disappoint. 2 points. The problem this week, though, was that he didn't even look like returning. He didn't even have chances. Most of the time we associate Nicholas Jackson with missing loads of easy chances, like he did the previous week against Bournemouth, I think it was. He had an XGI of like 1.4, I think it was. Missed 3 big chances, I think. This week was the opposite. He pretty much had no chances to speak of. I think he only had 1 shot. So this is more worrying. Like I've said before, I wouldn't tend to be worried if he's getting chances and missing them, but him not getting chances is not a good sign. However, he did play 90 minutes, which is a good sign. Then Phil Foden absolutely cooked against Ipswich. He really is on fire right now, to be fair. The last 4 weeks, he has got some serious points. He and City looked back to their old ways against Ipswich. Now, don't get me wrong, it was Ipswich. Their defence and their general defending wasn't all that far from it, but City did look good. They really did cut them open quite a few times. So Foden is a really nice one. The problem is the fixtures for Man City just get a bit worse now. In fact, they get a lot worse now. So he probably isn't someone you can buy right now, but if you did get him in previous to the last few games, then fair play, well done to you. Bruno Fernandes showing us why penalty takers are just sometimes brilliant. He and Man United didn't really have much in the game against Brighton. Brighton looked the better team. Man United are just so hit and miss. Like, they'd really turned up against Liverpool. Then the next few games, I mean, Ahmad really saved them against Southampton. They didn't look good against Brighton. So you never know what you're going to get with Man United, apart from the fact that Bruno will score you a penalty every now and then. And that's exactly what he did, and he comes away with 8 points for it. That's just how it works. Isak was really disappointing against Bournemouth. Newcastle in general were really disappointing. So Newcastle at home are just really good generally. Going to Newcastle and beating them 4-1 is big from Bournemouth, like huge. Especially the way that Newcastle are playing at the moment. They kept like 6 clean sheets in 7 or something. Unbelievable. Bournemouth attack is just so good. That did mean that Isak blanked, so he was kind of a good captain option as well, because the Bournemouth defence hasn't looked great, but Bournemouth were just too good for Newcastle. Haaland only managed 6 points in that, I think it was 6-0 that City won, which is pretty disappointing. He took his goal really well. He didn't even have loads of chances in the game. They were kind of falling to the likes of Foden and, well, Kovacic, I guess. But yeah, Haaland didn't really have many chances in the game. But what is good is that City look good again. But like I said with Foden, City's fixtures just get a bit rough now. So I'm not sure he's one that's going to be top of this captaincy model much going forward. Then we've got Salah, who blanked against Brentford. These two fixtures as well, Palmer with Wolves at home, Salah with Brentford away. Both really nice fixtures. Both defences aren't great. And we kind of saw that, to be fair. I mean, Liverpool did struggle to create something at Brentford, but they did end up doing it towards the end of the game. Chelsea obviously won 3-1, I think it was. So these teams did put goals past their opponents. Palmer and Salah just were not involved, unfortunately. Salah did have a few chances, and Palmer almost got a return from the Madueke goal situation, but it wasn't to be, so it didn't matter too much who you went for, unless you went for someone like Foden or Haaland, of course. Well done in that case. But right, let's have a look at the numbers for Game Week 23 now. Okay, right, so I've got the bottom 7 of the top 10 on screen now. We'll go through these guys and then we'll talk about the top 3 after that. So, a pretty high week in terms of expected points. I mean, we usually see like the bottom 5 of these all have under 5 points, but it's a pretty high scoring week in general. There's some really nice fixtures for teams like Liverpool, teams like Newcastle, teams like Spurs. So yeah, what we're seeing is interesting. We've got Eze in 10th with Brentford at home. As we've mentioned, Brentford just aren't a great defence, especially when they're away from home as well, which they are this week. And Eze's just performing well. He's scored points or returned in the last maybe 3 or 4 game weeks. So he's playing well. Mateta's playing very well. And Crystal Palace just seem to have something going at the moment. So I do like Eze. I probably wouldn't be putting the armband on him myself just because there's so many better options this week. But I do like him if you've got him in your team. And if you're looking for someone to buy, then he's not the worst option, albeit their fixtures do turn a little bit soon and they may not play in Game Week 29. So just be aware of that. Then we've got Pedro Porro at number 9. Now, I'm not big on this, if I'm honest. Obviously, it's the model's numbers, so it is what it is, and the fixture's unbelievable. Leicester at home is a fantastic fixture, but Spurs are just awful. Really bad. They conceded 3 goals to Everton at the weekend, and they made Everton look like a really, really good team. Like a really, really good football team, which we know they're not. So that is just something to note when we're talking about Spurs players here. Spurs are bad. Porro is obviously a pretty attacking fullback, so I get why his numbers would be high here, but their defence is just bad. As a team, they're bad. And they're so hit and miss. Spurs. They will turn up in a random game, usually against better teams. To be honest, like when they play City, they're usually good. When they play Arsenal, they weren't actually bad either. So it's just you can't trust them in the easier games. So I wouldn't be going near Porro personally. Then Cole Palmer is quite far down this list for the first time in a while, 8th, and that is obviously because he plays City away. Now, it's not a bad time to play City, don't get me wrong. Chelsea are one of the better attacks in the league this season. They're creating a hell of a lot, and Palmer is a big reason for that. City's defence hasn't been the best of late, however, they do seem to be stumbling upon something that works a little bit, so there's just too many other good options to be captaining Palmer this week, I think. Then we've got Anthony Gordon, Southampton away, a lovely fixture. We've seen that a lot of teams have put a lot of goals past Southampton recently. We've seen Brentford put a lot past them. We've seen, I can't remember who else they've played recently, but a fair amount of teams have put a lot of goals past Southampton. So there's no reason why Newcastle can't do the same. If you exclude the Bournemouth game, Newcastle are one of the form teams in the league. They're scoring goals, they're keeping clean sheets, so this is a really good fixture for them. Then we have Luis Diaz. Now, he is one of obviously 3 Liverpool players in this top 10. They've got Ipswich at home. Unbelievable fixture, of course. Almost as good as it gets, really. Diaz is in this list with just 65 expected minutes. If you think he starts, which he probably does start up front. I mean, Jota is or has got a small injury. We know this. He's not fully fit. He hasn't started a game since around game week 7 or 8, I think. So chances are Diaz will start up top. There is a small chance that Darwin starts up top, but it's likely to be Diaz. He probably won't play 90 minutes, which is the only issue, but to be honest, it's Ipswich at home. The fixture's great. If he's playing up top, he could be so explosive as well, so he really isn't a bad option if you think he gets good minutes. Haaland is in 5th with Chelsea at home. Chelsea defence is nothing special, let's be honest, we know that. Chelsea attack is really good, Chelsea defence just isn't. And City have something good going on at the moment, it seems, so I don't hate this captaincy option in Haaland, to be honest. The problem is there's just better options. Trent is in 4th with 80 expected minutes. If you think these minutes are incorrect, then kind of temper the expectations around that. If you think he gets less, then he's probably down in 6th or 7th. If you think he gets more, then he's still not going to be top, but he is just a great option this week. And obviously we know that Liverpool have a double game week next week, so yeah, he is just a great option right now. Then let's look at the top 3. So we have Isak in 3rd with Southampton away. These 3 were kind of expected given their fixtures and given who else is in this list. We've seen Gordon down in 7th. Now we've got Isak in 3rd. Ignoring the Bournemouth game again, he's returned in 8 game weeks in a row or something crazy like that. So he is a fantastic option. Son is in 2nd. This is only with 78 expected minutes as well. If you think he gets more minutes, then he still doesn't go top. Even with 90 minutes, he still is in the 7s probably, or high 6s. So obviously he's not going to go top. I would go nowhere near captaining Son this week. Obviously these are the model's numbers, so I'm just displaying them as they are and explaining them. But like I mentioned with Porro, you just can't trust Spurs in the easy games. Like I say, they usually turn up in the harder games, so they were a mess against Ipswich when they played them not that long ago. They're a mess against Palace. Just these fixtures that should be easier, you just can't trust them in. So yeah. And then Salah is of course top. The gap is massive. The gap is over 2 expected points. We rarely see that in this model. Usually, there's not usually a gap of over 1 expected point. The best captain option this week is Salah. It is fairly obvious. So yeah, there's not much to say about it really. The best captain option this week is Salah. The best captain option next week is also going to be Salah given the double game week. So it's a boring couple of weeks for captaincy, but also one thing to note, 8.49 is extremely high for a single game, for 1 game week. We haven't seen many higher. Haaland earlier in the season was a little bit higher. I'm not sure what Salah was against Southampton as well, but very, very high. We usually see 6s or in the 7 maybe, but it's still not a triple captaincy option. Especially if you've got your triple captain still, then you know that the double game week is happening next week. That's the time to use it. I've still got my triple captain chip and I'll be using it next week. So don't play it this week, although that is a very, very high number. Okay, that's all for this one. If you liked the video, do hit like, do subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.